and welcome to the Thursday, February 18th, 2021 meeting of the Ann Arbor City Planning Commission. This meeting is being held electronically to protect public health and safety due to the COVID-19 virus and to comply with orders issued by the governor, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and/or the Washtenaw County Health Department. We intend to conduct the meeting similarly to an in-person meeting. However, please be patient if there are technical issues. Public comment will be via telephone only. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, please call 877-853-5247 or any of the other published numbers and enter meeting ID 939-5339-6143. This information is also available on the published agenda, in the public notices section of the city website, and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN Channel 16, AT&T Channel 99, and also online at a2gov.org/watchctn. You can select the government channel. Item number 2 on the agenda is a roll call. Mr. Leonard.
Good evening, commissioners. Commissioner Mills.
Here.
Commissioner Milstein.
Here.
Commissioner Gibrandel.
Here.
Commissioner Sauvé.
Here.
Commissioner Abrams.
Here.
Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
Here.
Commissioner Dish.
Here.
Commissioner Lee.
Here.
Commissioner Clark.
Here.
Full house and quorum.
Excellent. Looks like no introductions. All right, moving on to item 4, which is the approval of the agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Moved by Commissioner Sauvé, seconded by Commissioner Dish. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say yes or raise your hand. I see all hands. Commissioner Clark, there we go. All right. The motion carries. Item number 5 is minutes of the previous meeting. Those are the minutes from February 2nd, 2021. May I have a motion to move the minutes? Moved by Commissioner Abrams, seconded by Commissioner Dish. Any discussion of the minutes? All those in favor of the minutes as drafted, please say yes or raise a hand. That is everyone. The motion carries. Item 6 are the reports from City Administration, City Council, Planning Manager, Planning Commission officers and committees, and written communications. And I'll just report that we have a couple big packets of communication online from the 2 items that we discussed at the last working session. Thank you for organizing it that way, by the way. Staff, Councilmember Dish, do you have any report for us from Council?
You know, it totally slipped my mind, and right now nothing is coming to the surface of my mind, so I may need to rely on Mr. Leonard to help me with what I've forgotten.
It's a Thursday. We don't normally meet on Thursdays, for those of you who don't know that we don't normally meet on Thursdays.
Sure, no problem. So at the City Council meeting on earlier this week, we had 3 planning-related actions. We had approval of a site plan for a 2150 Freeze, which was St. Francis addition. We had an approval of a site plan for a multifamily residential at 907-913 South Main Street. And then we also had just first reading on annexation, a recently annexed property 2731. And then looking forward at the Ordinance Revisions Committee agenda for next week, we're going to have a pretty packed agenda. We're going to touch on site plan review thresholds, T1, the transit zoning district, accessory dwelling units, and a proposed ordinance amendments as directed by City Council relative to short-term rentals. So it will be a rather rapid-fire ORC meeting. Lastly, I want to point out, I think I shared with the Commission, and for the benefit of anyone else, the recording of the working session that was referenced from the 9th, where we had a lot of feedback and discussion on accessory dwelling units and the transit zoning, is now been memorialized on video and available on the both project websites for both of those two proposed ordinance amendments. So I think I shared the link with you as well, but please note that it's also available on our website for your binge watching leisure.
Very good. Any other commissioner officers or committee liaisons have anything to report out? Commissioner Lee.
Sure. I started the Transportation Commission meeting yesterday. Three of the items that we talked about were we had a presentation on equitable community engagement. The other two big items were city administration of snow removal from sidewalks. So the Transportation Commission was in favor of pushing the city to further investigate how the city could see sidewalks as something that they do in terms of snow removal. They considered it an equity issue. Sidewalks are fundamental transportation edges, essentially. So they wanted the city to continue to look at how they might actually implement that. So a snow buddy study was shared. It's actually a pretty good read. It's about 60 pages though. And then the last item was personally mobility vehicles. I think it's mostly around like those bird scooters and essentially anything that's kind of motorized is traveling on sidewalks. So we talked about duty of care, health, safety, general welfare on the sidewalks. And one of the discussions was on the ordinance language regarding a 10-mile-per-hour speed limit, which is equivalent to about running at a 6-minute mile. But then they had actually just said, we don't really want to put a speed limit because it won't be really enforceable. No one's out there with LiDAR at sidewalks. So those are the three items. It was my first one. So I hope that's a sufficient summary.
Very good. Thank you for representing us there and bringing what's going on there back to the table. Any others? All right, very good. Next on the agenda is item 7, which is public comment. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes about an issue that is not listed as a public hearing on this agenda. So this is not the time to talk about 2385 East Ellsworth or 2394 Winewood. To comment on any other matters, please call 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 939-5339-6143. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand, calling on you by the last 3 digits of your telephone number. You raise your hand on your phone by pressing *9. When it's your turn to speak, there'll be an automated message telling you that. Mr. Leonard will also call on you by those last 3 digits of your telephone number. Please move to a quiet area, mute any background sound so that we can hear you clearly. And please also state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. If any callers on the line wish to address, have public comment right now, you can press *9 to indicate that you'd like to speak.
None indicated.
All right, very good. We'll move on to item number 8 then, which is public hearings for the next business meeting.
Yes, we have 2 scheduled public hearings for the March 2nd, 2021 meeting of the Planning Commission. The first is proposed amendments, speaking of long ordinance titles, proposed amendments to Table 515-1, Table 515-2, Section 5.33, Section 5.37.2P, and Section 5.37.2S of Chapter 55 of the City Code of Ordinance for City Council approval, the Unified Development Code, to establish and regulate short-term rental uses. And then the second is proposed amendments to Table 515, Permitted Use Table, and Section 516.6D, Accessory Dwelling Unit, specific standards in Chapter 15, Unified Development Code, Article 5 of the City of Ann Arbor Code of Ordinances, accessory dwelling unit modifications that were discussed at the working session.
Very good. So that is effectively 2 weeks, more or less. Again, next week is the working set or the ordinance revisions committee. So 2 opportunities coming up for ordinance change discussions.
And always as a reminder, folks are always welcome to email us as well in between those opportunities at planning@a2gov.org.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leonard. We'll move on to item number 9A. This is regular business. This is the petition at 2385 East Ellsworth Road, site plan and special exception use for Planning Commission approval. As is our standard procedure, we'll give the petitioner up to 10 minutes to tell us about the project and proposal. Staff will then offer a presentation, and then we'll open up the public hearing before commission discusses the item. So as Mr. Leonard is populating with the petitioner and staff, we'll give him a minute there.
Okay, Mr. Hart, I think you should be able to access shared screen. And whenever you're ready, you have up to 10 minutes to present to the Planning Commission.
All right, is that screen coming through?
Is.
Yes.
All right, let me, all right, my name is Heath Hart. We are here, we have Brian Fenich and Kyle Gonzalez, the architect, and also Steve Soka, the owner for the property, all present. So if there's any questions that I cannot answer, we have a good group here that I'm sure we can answer any questions that you might have. This is a request. This is a property 2385 East Ellsworth. It's an existing property. The property is kind of it's on the north side of Ellsworth between Shadowwood Drive and Jonathan Court. Just kind of pointing out this aerial, I just kind of want to drop in just so you can see that the current site is kind of a mass of pavement and building structures. And looking at the site to our east, we've got a Forest Hills Co-op, which is the zoned R4A. And then to the west and also to the north, we have C1 commercial zoning. So we've got residential to our east and then commercial to our west and to the north. And as I stated, the existing property, it's got a large impervious footprint. There's no stormwater management. There is no buffer provided to the R4, except there is a existing masonry wall that separates the east property line. It lies right on the property line, and we are proposing to maintain that existing masonry wall to provide additional screening. When we came to you first, that would have been, it would have been over a year ago. This is the plan that we had provided. And after we had left and got the original SEU approval, we started looking at this plan and noticed some issues. The biggest being, we are at that point in time, we were proposing a new building that was going to lie in the south side of the property. And with the square foot of that building, even maxing out our allowable off-street parking, we had 6 spaces. And our owner and the use of the building had a real concern with only providing the 6 spaces. Also, the circulation patterns was not the best. We had a single entrance, a single-sided parking lot, and our space constraints really did not allow us to add any additional parking to service the medical marijuana, the recreational marijuana facility. So we had some concerns with that original plan. We're coming forward today with a new plan, and this plan, what we're proposing is to renovate the existing building. So we're taking away the new construction for a new structure away from the plan. This existing building years ago served as a liquor store. So it already had a solid foundation for us to work off of, a footprint for us to work within, to renovate it, to make it work for our purposes. With this new building, this is 2,533 square foot building. So with that square footage, we were allowed to increase our parking spaces to a total of 9, which is maximizing the allowable parking, which serves a great benefit for our use. It also provides an increased circulation pattern. Now we have an area you can actually pull in, and then there's a large vehicular use area that's in the center that allows for turning movements. So as cars come in, they're allowed to turn around. It also allows for a trash truck to come in and turn around on site, as well as a fire truck can actually back up and make that turn, although it is deficient in the regulations. We do have fire department approval, but since this is less than 150 feet, we're not required to have a turnaround, but in running a truck turning movements, it is possible for a fire truck to turn around if in case that event ever was needed. So we also greatly decreased the impervious footprint. Right now, the northern proposed lot split would be, all that existing pavement would be removed. That would be restored with grass. We were providing a 15-foot wide natural feature, or I'm sorry, a conflicting use buffer along the eastern edge to separate our commercial use from the residential use to the east. We are also increased the width of this sidewalk. So we don't fall under the requirements for the electric vehicle ordinance. However, with this arrangement, we do have the capabilities of dropping in a electric vehicle charger, and that would probably be laying right between the ADA parking space and a regular parking space. And that could be a dual charger to serve actually 2 parking spots, a accessible parking spot as well as a standard parking spot. And the spatial requirements do allow for the placement of that charger if it was ever desired in the future. And it would still allow for the pedestrian access widths needed on the sidewalk to be able to maneuver that sidewalk without conflicting with the placement of that. So we were pleased about that that consideration, that if in the event it's decided to add it, we don't have to reconstruct or reconfigure any parking or sidewalks in order to get that consideration. We are dual using the pavement area with a large underground detention system for stormwater management. That would be used in conjunction with a structural water quality unit. That's one of the units that would capture sediments and allow for pumping of that structure to remove those sediments. So when we discharge into the street, it would be clean water, and it also would be a controlled release rate to prevent any downstream capacity issues with the existing storm drain. I will say with that storm drain that's in Ellsworth Road, we were notified actually last week that is a county drain. So we scrambled over the last week and worked with the Water Resources Commissioner office in order to get the approval for this system. And really pleased with the layout and how this is all working. And I guess next I'll turn it over to Kyle, unless there's questions on the site layout I can answer. And if not, I'll turn it over to Kyle and he can speak on the building.
Kyle, he left you about a minute.
Okay. The concept for this building is to reuse as much of the existing as possible. There's no new development. We're not proposing any additions. The awning that you see here is it's actually integrated into the overall structure, so we couldn't cut it off and redo it like we would in other facilities. It's integrated into the overall roof structure. One of the things that we are doing here is using lifetime materials, stone veneers, Nichiha panels, fiber cement that have a 10-year just finished warranty. The other part of this overall concept is to raise the parapet height. It does two things. One, it gets a little bit more of a street presence and minimizes the scale of the awning. And two, it provides a little bit more screening to the adjacent sites on either side. We don't think you're going to see any of our RTUs from the ground, but anyone who's possibly on a second level, we're looking out for them. There's the layout. This area was concerned with security, and this is one of the few locations that we've designed a few in the city, but this is one of the few locations that we have an exit vestibule. There's a separate entry, separate exit, and it's there just as an extra security precaution. You can see the extra parapets, and then all of the existing light fixtures that you see on the building on this image have been replaced or are proposed to be replaced with dark sky compliant light fixtures. We use Lithonia wedge fixtures and WST. They're on one of the later sheets or one of the site plan sheets. I can bring that up if needed.
That's 10 minutes.
Perfect
Thank you.
timing. Nicely done. All right. There we go. Ms. DeLeo, do you have a report for us?
Thank you. I'll start by saying I can pull up some graphics as well, but I think I'll just keep it a little more brief, but know that I have them on standby. But thank you very much. Let me just go over some of the technical aspects of what is before you tonight. You have two motions in your staff report because there are two petitions. One is a site plan for planning commission approval. So I know that currently you don't approve very many site plans, but since there are no building additions, it's just site work. This falls under the site plan for planning commission approval category. And also we have an amended special exception use before you. The approved special exception use is very specific to a marijuana provisioning center / retailer to be in place in a newly constructed building south of the existing building on this site. So the amendment is to change that condition to allow the approved use in the existing building. The staff report does have a long proposed motion for you for both petitions. I think that Mr. Hart and Mr. Gonzalez explained very well what's going on with the site improvements. The staff report also runs through a brief description of that. Staff report also goes through the special exception use standards, the general standards, which for all special exception uses are summarized. Master plan consistency, compatibility with the general vicinity, consistent with the neighborhood and not detrimental to it, parking, pedestrian safety, vehicular movement and traffic on and surrounding the site, and impacts on natural features. I will point out that I have a error in the staff report, a little bit too much copying and pasting in the pandemic and not enough proofreading. The staff report general special exception use standards mentions that the site has enough space to accommodate 1,500 square foot commercial parking for the proposed use. That was for the old site plan in the new building. Now, you can see from the site plan that the current site also has enough parking to meet the ordinance requirements and thus the general special exception use standards. And then specific special exception use standards for marijuana facilities. The applications need to come with some additional required information, things that address the operations, safety and security plans. You have to address the description of odor control, the waste disposal plan, and state the hours of operation. Those, I went over those in the staff report as well. Overall, we found that the site plan meets all of the development approval standards, and the request to amend the special exception use doesn't change or negate the previous findings. In some sense, you can argue that the amended use in the existing building is perhaps more compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, residential neighborhood, because it doesn't increase the volume of commercial uses in the area. It reuses the existing building. Staff has reviewed, development review team has reviewed all the materials as well and has no outstanding comments. Staff report and the motion mentions that we recommended approval subject to receiving the county water resources commissioner's approval, and that just came yesterday. Thank you to the applicant team for working so well with us on this last minute twist. And the staff report, I provided a little bit of background, which I won't go over, but I'll just mention it's there because we have, it's not deja vu. We have talked about this project a bit in the past year. Staff is recommending approval of the site plan and the amended special exception use. I'm happy to answer any further questions.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'll open the public comment for this petition. Public comment may be made by calling 877-853-5247 and then entering meeting ID 939-5339-6143. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one, calling on you by the last 3 digits of your telephone number. You can digitally raise your hand by pressing *9. Once you'll hear an automated announcement. Once the host is allowing you to speak, please move to a quiet area and mute any background sounds so that we can hear you clearly. Please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. And I know there's a bit of a delay, so I'll wait to see if anyone calls in.
No callers currently on the line.
All right. Then, because it's a very long motion, I'll close the public comment, and if somebody sneaks in while we're reading it, we can butt in. Commissioner Gibrandel, would you be so kind as to read it? Or I can do this one if you want to read the next one. All right, will do. So, buckle up. The Ann Arbor City Planning Commission, after hearing all interested persons and reviewing all relevant information, including an accompanying site plan, finds the petition substantially meets the standards in Chapter 55 Unified Development Code, Section 5.29.5.d Special Exceptions, and Section 5.16.3.g Marijuana Facility, and therefore amends the 2385 East Ellsworth Road special exception use for a medical marijuana provisioning center / marijuana retailer. This amended approval is based on the following findings. 1, the proposed use remains consistent with the C1 local business district, which provides for commercial retail uses as well as office and residential uses. 2, the amended location of the proposed use will not adversely impact traffic, pedestrians, bicyclist circulation, or road intersections based on the location. East Ellsworth Road provides access to the site, and the proposed use is consistent with other surrounding uses' traffic impact. 3, a site plan documenting the existing and proposed conditions of the site has been submitted in conjunction with this application. 4, through documentation submitted by the petitioner regarding waste disposal, inventory tracking, security, and other methods of operation of the facility, the provisioning center / retailer in the amended location on the site will still be operated in a manner that will not have an adverse impact on the neighboring properties or area, and will not have a detrimental impact on natural features. 5, previous conditions relating to timing and deadlines remain in effect, maintaining established expectations despite the amended physical form and location of the provisioning center retailer on the site. This amended special exception use approval is based on the following conditions. 1, approval of a site plan to redevelop the site for a marijuana provisioning center or retailer is approved by May 19th, 2021. 2, a land division application to create the lots proposed on the site plan is submitted and approved prior to issuance of any permits or licenses. 3, the petitioner obtaining and maintaining both a state of Michigan marijuana license and a city of Ann Arbor marijuana permit, and providing documentation to planning services by November 19th, 2022. 4, the petitioner operating a marijuana business at this address by November 19th, 2022. And the Ann Arbor City Planning, the second motion effectively is that the Ann Arbor City Planning Commission hereby approves the 2385 East Ellsworth site plan dated January 25th, 2021, subject to 1, approval of a land division as proposed, and 2, approval by the Washtenaw County Water Resources Commissioner prior to issuance of any permits or licenses. Moved by Commissioner Dish, seconded by Commissioner Gibrandl. Any discussion of the proposed motion? Commissioner Milstein.
Thank you. Ms. DeLeo, so my recollection was the reason why last time around they were not able to use the existing building there was because they were within 600 feet of Bryant Elementary. And so the reason, so they did the whole, so the reason why they moved, they pretty much changed the property line was, the reason was so that they were more than 600 feet away. Is that correct? And so what they're doing now is they are instead cutting the back part of the property and keeping the existing building in the front in place, and that's more than 600 feet away from the school?
Yes, exactly. The building itself is more, that is, has plenty of distance. And by doing the land division, cutting the northern part of the property rather than putting the line south of the building, there still is a conforming lot created. We have a sketch on file about that you can get a retail building and small parking lot on the north. So it's a conforming lot and it has development potential. It could have any permitted commercial use on it, but it could not have a marijuana facility on it now for 2 reasons. One, it is too close to Bryant Elementary, and now it's too close to another provisioning center retailer. But the spirit and the rules are being maintained, but the land division line is being moved.
So technically, from what I believe I heard from the petitioner's presentation was, the northern parcel now, the small parcel, was going to be used as green space. But what I'm hearing from you is that it is technically a developable lot, so they could potentially put a building on that property. Is that correct?
Yes, it will be in the immediate term. They need to do the land division, and they need to remove all the impervious surface and restore it to a more vacant condition, because parking is not a permitted principal use in the C1 district. However, it being a fully conforming lot, vacant lot, a site plan could be submitted in the future for a commercial use. But the immediate is for it to be a vacant lot, and all previous improvements are going to be removed so that it is truly a vacant lot and it will not be used inconsistent with the zoning.
Okay. So I would like the commission, as we're having a conversation about this, to discuss that, knowing that that's not going to be there's a potential that that property could be developed. I believe we had a conversation, when this was before us, that, this is sort of working, actually it's not working the system, but I don't know what the exact terminology that I would use, but it's sort of like going around around the 600 feet from the school criteria that we have. So I feel like this is now, so here they are cutting off the northern parcel, but we have no guarantee that that is going to remain it could be developed into another building. So what we're currently seeing as a grassy area, that might go away. So I'd like to get feedback from other commissioners as they're talking about this item. Thank you.
Mr. Leonard?
Yeah, and Planner DeLeo can correct me if I'm wrong, but I also want to set the scale on that distance requirement. To be clear, when we first looked at this parcel, well, let me back up. The city has 2 public mapping systems. One of our mapping systems showed that it did meet the requirements of the separation. Another one of our mapping systems showed that it didn't meet the requirements of the separation. Based on the margin for error, and to be clear, that measurement with it was within 1 foot. It was, between the last foot of the requirement. So because of my understanding, what I learned then to be the margin of error, frankly, for measuring based on those tools, that's what ultimately necessitated our contact of the petitioner, letting them know that they would not meet it without clear documentation of that. Basically, they would need a broader survey of numerous parcels in order to document, because I couldn't reliably conclude that based on that. So I just want to set that scale. I totally agree with how you question why this was happening. Commissioner Milstein and Planner DeLeo is absolutely accurate, but I do want to be clear that it was awfully close without this from the dimension. So I don't want you to go on the sort of premise that we're talking about the majority of that property is necessary to meet that separation. It's not. It was awfully close to the corner of that existing one. I couldn't conclude that it was compliant with the ordinance without it. With this division, it's clearly compliant. So I just wanted to set that stage. But I totally agree with the point. Our intention was, for the time being, to make sure that this use didn't, frankly, creep into that area out of compliance with that. But long term, we don't know what's going to happen, but we do know it would be subject to site plan review.
Thank you for that clarification. Commissioner Clark, I saw your hand up before. Was that by accident? I'm trying to read your lips, assuming, yeah, you don't want to talk.
My hand's not up.
Okay, great. Any other commissioners have comments or questions, or want to take Commissioner Milstein up? Commissioner Dish.
Yeah, I want to take Commissioner Milstein up because my two main questions about this project were, what is anticipated for the vacant lot? And I suppose the answer could be nothing's anticipated at the moment, but we've just had a discussion of what is possible. And you mentioned in the report that several residents have written to oppose the proposed use. Those communications were included in our packet this time around. And so I wondered if you could summarize some of those concerns. I glean from the presentation of the proposal that security was among them, and that concern has been addressed a little bit, as much as it can be, the information divulged to us, and the rest will be, of course, given to the state, but that we don't make all that public because we do not want to assist Danny Ocean in planning a heist. So we will not ask any more questions about security, but I would love to hear about objections and if there are any existing plans for that developable lot. And I kind of see that there's not really much we can do about it necessarily, but I'd love to hear whatever anybody wants to say.
I can address the some of the comments from the original special exception use approval, and I can let the owner, the design team, the future use. I suspect there are no immediate plans for the future use of the lot. From the original special exception use public hearing, the neighborhood, I can summarize it by saying they seem to be appreciative, actually, of this current owner taking over the property. My understanding is there was a lot of conflict and the former Liquor Lotto Deli was sort of a nuisance. It became a hangout. It was not a bright spot of the neighborhood. I think there's a lot of desire paths that cut across from the neighborhoods coming to this site. I think that the current use of the site literally cleaned it up a bit. It removed some of that attractive nuisance element, I believe, and it's a physically nicer site, and they expressed some appreciation for that. But their main concern was they did not want a medical marijuana or retail facility in such proximity to so much housing. They felt it was would be a bad influence on the neighborhood. It would make things too accessible and too easy, and it would send the wrong message for the neighborhood. Very valid concerns, but from our other facilities in the neighborhood, but I have to say there was an equal number of persons in support of the provisioning center and retailer, talking about how they would appreciate this service so close in the neighborhood. They are patients or recreational users. And so that was actually almost a 50-50 public hearing. And you didn't ask, but just to clarify, if the amended special exception use is not approved, the current special exception use would still remain. It is not invalidated. It may or may not be the right word.
There
Was still the outstanding question about the development team's plans, and is that if anyone from the development team would like to talk to that?
I can talk to that briefly. There are no plans currently for that that lot. It's just a grassed area for now. There was a plan that was proposed to demonstrate how a business could be placed there, but there is no plans for a business to be placed in that area.
Do I get one follow-up?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We don't have the same time limits, I think, that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm afraid now. Thank you for your answers and your candor. And certainly the grassy spot looks great. I was just curious, this was another thing that occurred to me when I was looking at the project. Do we have other marijuana provisioning centers in such close proximity to residential housing? Great. Okay. That's, good to know. Maybe a brief list, if anybody could follow up with that, so I can be prepped for council, but other than that.
You missed the string for a while. We heard a lot of petitions. Any other questions? Commissioner Hammerschmidt. And if Mr. Leonard has something that's clarifying.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on Commissioner Dish, your comment. I presume you're just talking about information. Just to be clear, the Planning Commission is the final stop for the special exception use and the site plan in this circumstance. So, however, if any site plan was proposed for that lot, that would go under the current regs. It would go through the Planning Commission and on to City Council consideration.
Thank you. Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
Yeah, just quickly, I think the petitioner, Mr. Hart, you showed this. Sorry if you guys can hear screaming children. You showed this, I think, on the first slide, but can you just remind us what, in the original proposal, what was happening in that back portion, if anything?
It was parking lot.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought. I just couldn't remember. Thanks.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Goodbrandel.
I'm just curious, Mr. Hart, does the underground detention, is it infiltration at all? Are the soils really bad there, or did it, it's bad? Okay, it seems really variable in that area in terms of sand and clay. I was just curious. And then I presume the drive kind of heading towards the back, even though it's not really going anywhere. is that mainly for the fire truck to be able to kind of pull up to the building, or is it more about the future use of access to the back?
That is a shared access for both access and franchise utilities to service that back lot. The easement's going to be in place at this current time, but so there, it is an access point to that back lot right now, which I believe is required as part of the land division. You know, it has to have access to a public street.
Okay, all righty, thanks.
Other comments or questions? I have a couple. And I'll start with the one that kind of follows on to what Commissioner Milstein said, and I've been trying to pull it up, but you guys know the plan better than I can look on my screen. What kind of physical separation? I know that you're removing concrete, but what is stopping people from parking on the new lawn that you establish? Because people park on the lawn sometimes in this town. So how do we stop them from doing that?
There are no physical separations right now on the plan. Well, I guess I can double check if there's going to be a curb on the back of the sidewalk or not. I didn't mean sidewalk, drive. But perhaps curbing can be installed. Even some bollard type things could be installed.
If there's nothing right now, I'm not the landscape architect on this, but I mean, planting bushes, right? Or something that is physically planted to stop people. Like I would actually feel more confident then that this is functioning as two separate lots, and that sure, there could be another development that's unrelated based on what we hear. It has to be it couldn't be some kind of a marijuana facility just because of the proximity issue, and also like what's to an existing facility. So some development does go there, they would have to tear it out, but I don't want to play landscape architect at the table. But I'm just wondering if kind of curving that landscape buffer, that conflicting land use buffer around works. This is actually like a question then for the development team.
I'm happy to agree to it, but I don't own the lot.
I'll take that. I don't think we'd have any issue with that. Planting some shrubs. We wouldn't plant a tree, obviously, because that would be detrimental if we have to cut it down if there is a future development, but some low-growing shrubs, some grasses, something as a physical delineation, or we could do a curb across the.
I welcome others' thoughts, but that would give me a little bit more confidence, because a lot of these standards are reliant on people, neighbors calling in, and I don't want to, particularly if this is done intended to, honor that separation. I think physically putting something there to make it more difficult. I don't know that we need bollards, and honestly, I would rather see shrubs than a curb. But welcome others' thoughts. Mr. Leonard.
My crack staff has put together a proposed condition, just I will throw out there for your consideration. It would be a fifth condition of the special exception use plan that would direct that the petitioner work with staff to develop a landscaping plan, curb, or other method to create a physical barrier to restrict use of the vacant northern site.
I like that. I almost would, I kind of would rather have landscaping plan rather than the curb. But I'll go with what your crack staff has developed, and I'll move it, I guess. Anybody want to second it? Okay, Commissioner Milstein. So now we are in discussion of the amendment, not the overall plan, because it was moved and seconded. Now we're in discussion about the amendment. So what do people think about requiring that? Commissioner Clark.
I think that's a great idea. It's gonna be really important to separate those two parcels, especially stay in the spirit of, keeping that separation. And I was just kind of concerned about the security. And I think it would also be good if there's some kind of a buffer there, especially a hedge, just to ensure that the security for the property stays on the property and doesn't, you know, have security guards or anything at the back of it, things like that. So there's a lot of benefit there, that buffer.
Great. Other questions? So Commissioner Clark, I guess because I moved it as discussed, it sounds to me like you like hedge. Should we cut out the curb?
I like the curb as well, because I do think that like people parking back there seems like it might happen, and I don't know.
Okay. So keeping it as part of it makes sense. I'm fine with that too. Other questions, discussion of the proposed amendment? Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
I mean, I would actually be fine with just saying landscape. I mean, I feel like you're going to put a curb. I mean, who knows when this will be developed, but if you're going to pour the concrete and have to rip the concrete out, that just seems like a lot of work and expense, and you could reuse some of the like landscaping elements that you put in. So, I mean, I would be in favor of just saying a landscape, but I could also go either way. That's just my general feeling about the situation.
And leave it up to staff to hash out the details. Commissioner,
Yeah,
Mr. Leonard.
I would just point out that this language would provide for that option. But if for some reason the petitioner, you know, or for some reason we didn't think the landscaping was going to adequately, we weren't going to be able to get to a solution. This just does provide some flexibility, but generally I think the development team is probably of the same mind as referenced by the tree comment. You know, there's probably no intention to make it more difficult than less for future consideration.
Great. Other comments on the amendment or questions, discussion? All in, do you want a roll call on the amendment, Mr. Leonard, or should we just, can we do a voice vote?
Voice vote on the amendments, okay.
Okay, all in favor of the amendment to require landscaping, curb, or other thing, please say yes or raise a hand.
Yes.
Any opposed? I see none. Okay, so now we have an amended main motion. I still had two more comments. Or questions. One is about the EV parking. And there was a comment that the petitioner made that it's not required, and that was confusing to me because I do see like a retailer / provisioning center is on the table that's now in part of the UDC code. So staff, can you help us understand that?
Yeah.
Yes, the EV parking ordinance applies to site plans for city council. This is not a site plan for city council.
Got it.
If the rear parcel was developed, that would be adding new floor area and it would require compliance with the EV ordinance.
Got it. So, and if it, site plans for this use typically do stop with us.
Yeah.
Unless it's a brand new development, probably.
Yeah, if a new building was being proposed, that would require city council approval, but because none of the triggers that would necessitate that are being provided here, it is your authority, and EV parking is not required.
Got it. And just so that I'm making sure that I'm reading the table right, if this were to something that would go before city council, they would need to provide 10% of the parking would need to be installed. Another 10% would need to be EV ready, which is conduit there, and 15% would need to be capable. That means they've got a big enough box. So they would have to install one charger.
Yep.
If that were required, and probably have 2 spaces wired to be able to do that. And then space in, again, the electrical connection for another charger or 2. The math on 9 spots is weird.
I agree. That was my read. And my first reaction was they'll need to provide the EV parking because that went into effect on February 14th. But as Mr. Leonard mentioned, it's not a site plan for city council, but I tried to encourage them and they were in agreement. Although the shopping habits at provisioning centers and retailers, the customers, it's a very quick trip. But employees, I said, if you may have an employee who would like to charge. And since they were redoing the parking lot anyway, they felt it would be easy enough to do. And that was the whole premise of the EV ordinance, that if you're doing enough site improvements, put in the capabilities.
Very good. So can you remind us one more time? Because I was distracted. Once you said it's not required, I was like, wait, I thought it was just required. So can you remind us one more time, either Ms. Leo or someone from the petitioner, about like what is going in?
Oh, I'm going to let Mr. Hart explain again. They were making it EV ready for, they were putting in a, I'll stop.
Essentially, we looked at the spatial requirements. When you put in an EV parking space, you have to maintain an access aisle width to allow for pedestrians to go by. So what we did is we bumped that sidewalk out, so now it's wider at the building. So in the event that it ever does go in, there is a physical spot that it will fit, and you won't have to modify curbs or gutters. The proposed spot would be right next to the building, so if it was going in, it would be essentially probably a slab of concrete that you'd pull out or cut out in order to install that. So very minor work to move forward with that.
Okay. And and you're wiring it now then?
No, we're not wiring it now. We're just making sure that there's spatial, a spot for it. So in the event it does go in, we're not going to have to reconfigure the parking lot.
Okay. Commissioner Gibrandel.
I'm glad the spatial part works. It seems to me that sleeving it would be really cheap and mean that it just is so much easier for it to potentially happen. And, just given that like GM just announced that they're going fully electric by 2035, this is what's happening. It just is. And so, again, I'm not suggesting that you necessarily upgrade your entire electrical panel or anything like that, but putting in a PVC sleeve to allow it for the future just seems like a small thing that would then make it such an easy lift for the future to be able to thread it on through. And just, and again, the bigger thing is the spatial capacity. I totally agree. But it seems to me that a sleeve would be really simple and straightforward to be able to do so that you all are set up for the future. So I would request that.
Is that a motion to amend?
Would we be amending we'd be amending the site plan, right?
It would be adding an additional condition. Is that fair, Mr. Leonard? Like that's what?
Yeah.
And so you want to make
I would first like to kind of see what other people think, I guess. If there's.
I would second that motion so that we can discuss it.
Okay. Let's discuss it.
Putting in the conduit to make it ready. Any discussion? I see some thumbs up. Mr. Leonard, was that, Commissioner Lee?
I would be in favor of that as well. At least it's the conduit. It's not necessarily the actual electrification itself, but just the infrastructure. So I don't think that's too egregious of an ask, but I would be in support of that.
Got it. I know that was kind of an informal amendment. This is what we're discussing is to make it effectively not EV installed, but EV ready, the installation of the conduit.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is a condition that it be essentially 2 parking spaces based on where they had previously mentioned that the proposed location would be made EV capable. So, which means obviously already designed in a way for physical, and it's going to include the raceway, not necessarily, and the space. It would require space in the panel. I would encourage you to make that consistent with our ordinance if we're going to be measuring that, but it doesn't have to yet be wired. The conductors don't need to be installed.
That sounds good. I like that.
So EV capable, that's the That's the entry level on our grid. Thank you for reminding us about what that all entails. Any other discussion of the proposed amendment, which would be adding that condition? All in favor, please raise your hand or say yes. Yes. I see everyone's hands. So that means we are back to the original motion that now has 2 amendments on it. I have one more question or comment, and I have to go back to my, this is actually, the petitioner mentioned that they are changing out the building lighting to be dark skies compliant, which is fantastic. Thank you. So presumably, even in the security plan, which we understand, we might not be privy to all of the security measures, but even in that, floodlights are not generally dark skies compliant, so that we're not having floodlights on this building effectively.
No, there are no floodlights.
Fantastic. Great. And I would just like,
We use
go ahead.
night vision cameras to get anything that's out a little bit further beyond.
Okay. So more light does not always necessarily mean more security. Is the message that I hear too. Any other comments or questions on this petition? Commissioner Milstein.
Just want to confirm the fencing that's currently around the property is going to be removed. Is that correct?
No, we were keeping the fencing,
Okay.
at least around the north and west side. The east side is a masonry wall that is also proposed to stay.
I guess what I'm talking about is the large gate that's currently at the front that's being
Yes.
removed. Is that correct?
That is correct. At the
Okay.
at the street side.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Lee?
I can't really tell on the site plan or not. Is the front curb, the concrete curb, going to be, or like the turning in lane, is that slated to be replaced as a part of this? I just can't really tell. There's a lot of cracks I see. So I don't know if, I really just can't tell. And the reason I'm bringing it up is simply because I see a pretty substantial bus stop nearby. And I'm just thinking from like a standpoint of like, I think aesthetically and, you know, with the landscaping kind of buffer, I overall like the design. I think it'll be better than what is currently there. I just also want to make sure that, you know, people that's using that bus stop is going to feel comfortable and safe. And so I just wanted to know if there's any, I just couldn't tell, is that turning in lane just going to remain the way it is? Because it doesn't look very good.
No, the turning in lane does get removed and replaced.
Okay, got it. So
Um,
it should be new concrete.
Yes, at our entry itself.
Mhm.
And then our sidewalk gets replaced at the entry.
Okay,
And then after site plan, when we work through with engineering, we do have to tie into a place that's ADA compliant. So if the existing sidewalk that we're tying into is not ADA compliant, we do have to go at least another 15 feet in order to try to find a place that's ADA compliant to tie into.
got it. All right, yeah, that's pretty much the extent. Overall, I think I am okay with what I see here. So I just wanted to at least mention the bus stop, and the residential use is obviously of a slight concern. I mean, a grocery or something that's a little more widely kind of accessible would be ideal, but we don't live in an ideal world. So I'll yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this petition? All right, then we'll do a roll call vote, recalling that the initial petition now has been amended twice.
Commissioner Gibrandel,
Yes.
Commissioner Sauvé,
Yes.
Commissioner Abrams,
Yes.
Commissioner Hammerschmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Dish,
Yes.
Commissioner Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Mills,
Yes.
Commissioner Milstein.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you.
All right. The next item, I'm scrolling through my forever long script here from the last petition discussion, is item, this must be 9B, 2394 Winewood Avenue special exception use for Planning Commission approval. As before, we'll start with up to 10 minutes of petitioner presentation and then staff filling in any, providing a presentation before we have the public hearing and the motion.
Yep, just give me one moment here.
No problem.
Did I lose anybody I wasn't supposed to? You'll all look here.
Petitioners, do you think you have everybody that you were expecting? You see them, their faces now. Okay, perfect. Whenever you're ready, then you can present for up to 10 minutes.
I'm Kathy Kyneth with Macon Engineering, and I prepared the site plan. We originally brought this plan, I'm gonna share our plan here. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so we originally came with this site plan back in 2018. And, well, I can get to the next page for you. And at that time, it was for a medical marijuana provisioning center. The site was upgraded. There were a lot of improvements made. There was impervious parking lot removed. There was new landscaping put in. There was handicap parking added, a lift on the outside of the building to accommodate the handicap parking. A dumpster was added. And since that time, all of those improvements have been made and they've been functioning. And this petition is strictly, there's no changes to the site plan. It's strictly to change from a medical marijuana provisioning center to a marijuana micro business. So I'm going to let Eric go ahead and talk with you and explain to you what the difference between those two things are.
Think you're still muted.
There, how's that?
Much better.
All right. My name's Eric. I've been operating the facility since 2017. Originally, it was a medical marijuana caregiver operation, so it was just serving my patients. And then from there, like Kathy said, in 2018, we were approved as a medical marijuana provisioning center. And also the site, so now we have a certificate of occupancy for not only the provisioning center, but also the marijuana grow and a processing facility. So the grow and the processing facility, because the building is M1, those are approved uses. And the provisioning center was a special exception use that was approved in 2018, and we made the changes. So now since then there's a new license that's been made available by the state. It's called a marijuana micro business. So it's an adult use license that is a single license type. That's all three of the uses that I was already doing combined onto one license. So instead of having three separate licenses for a provisioning center or retailer, a processor, and a grow. It's a single license type. It's called a micro business, and it's essentially a scaled down version of all three of those. So it's 150 plants as opposed to the 500 that it was previously approved for. And then we'll be allowed to process only the product that is produced in-house, and then we'll sell to the public the flower, marijuana flower, and then also the concentrates that are produced. So it's going to be a closed loop. We grow everything organic, so it's a small, vertically integrated marijuana facility, and so that required a special exception, or a separate special exception use. So that's what we're doing today. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the previous approval, or this micro business as well.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Khan or Mr. Leonard have anything to add?
I don't have much to add. This is Jeff Khan. Some of you may recall this petition coming before you in 2018. The petitioner did implement all the improvements that they promised they would implement. So we were very pleased by that. We were happy to issue a certificate of occupancy for the provisioning center. I think the only thing I'd like to do is read the staff recommendation. Staff recommends that the special exception use be approved with conditions, which are summarized in the motion, subject to the Planning Commission consideration, because the proposed special exception use is of such location, size, and character as to be compatible with the zoning district in which the site is situated, and the location and size of the proposed use, its nature and intensity, the site layout and access, and effect of the proposed use on public services would not be hazardous or inconvenient to the neighborhood, nor unduly conflict with normal traffic in the neighborhood. That's the staff recommendation. I do want to point out that we have not heard of any neighborhood complaints so far.
Very good. All right, I will open the public hearing for this petition. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes about the proposed 2394 Winewood special exception use. Public comment may be made by calling 877-853-5247 and then entering meeting ID 939-5339-6143. City staff will select callers that have digitally raised their hand. You do that by pressing *9 on your telephone. When it's your turn to speak, you'll hear an automated announcement, and Mr. Leonard will call on you by the last 3 digits of your telephone number. If you could please move to a quiet area, mute any background or television sounds so that we can hear you clearly. And please state your name and address for the record at the beginning of your comments. If there's any callers on the line that wish to speak at this public hearing, again, you press *9 to raise your hand. All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and either Commissioner Gabrandel or I will start to read the very long motion again. Would you like to do it this time, Commissioner Gabrandel? Thank you very much.
I will take it on. Okay, the Ann Arbor City Planning Commission, after hearing all interested persons and reviewing all relevant information, including an accompanying site plan, finds the petition to substantially meet the standards in Chapter 55 zoning ordinance, Section 5104 special exceptions, and Section 550.1 regulations concerning medical use of marijuana, and therefore approves the 2394 Winewood Street special exception use for a marijuana micro business. This approval is based on the following findings. The proposed use will be consistent with the M1 Limited Industrial District, which allows for industrial, limited retail, and office uses. The proposed use will not adversely impact traffic, pedestrians, bicyclists, circulation, or road intersections based on the location. South Maple Street and Winewood Street provide access to the site, and the proposed use is consistent with other surrounding uses. Through documentation submitted by the petitioner regarding waste disposal, inventory tracking, security, and other methods of operation of the facility, the provisioning center will be operated in a manner that will not have an adverse impact on the neighboring properties or area and will not have a detrimental impact on natural features. The special exemption use approval is based on the following conditions. The petitioner obtaining and maintaining both a state of Michigan medical marijuana license and a city of Ann Arbor marijuana permit and providing documentation planning services within 3 years of the City Planning Commission approval date of this petition. The petitioner operating a marijuana microbusiness at this address within 3 years of the City Planning Commission approval date of this petition. The petitioner ceasing operation of a marijuana provisioning center and or marijuana retailer at this location and satisfactory acknowledgement as the city's sole determination of adequacy. The special exemption use may only occupy 2394 Winewood Street. Approval of the special exemption use is subject to the petitioner maintaining site improvements as shown in the site plan, including new bicycle parking, relocated barrier-free parking space, and providing a barrier-free sidewalk to a building entrance. And approval of the special exemption use is subject to the petitioner installing an on-site solar panels that will provide a minimum of 10% of the facility's energy usage prior to the issuance of the final certificate of occupancy. And that the Ann Arbor Planning Commission approves the attached site plan which demonstrates compliance with the applicable special exemption use standards as no physical development of the property is proposed. Moved by Commissioner Sauvé, seconded by Hammerschmidt.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Gabrandel. Any discussion of the motion? Commissioner Dish, and then Commissioner Gabrandel. You're muted, Commissioner Dish.
I wanted to ask about the energy requirement. This is a pretty big building, and it seems like you could offset more than 10%, which I know is not a requirement, but I recall from an earlier discussion of a different grow facility that the energy footprint of these facilities is considerable. And so would it be possible to, I'm asking this, I guess, of staff as well as the petitioner. I don't know if it unreasonably raises the costs. If it lowers your energy bills, I think that would be a good thing. So is the design currently just to max out the whole surface on the roof? Is there any way to get more reduction, additional reduction other than 10%?
I'll just start from the regulatory side of it. It's something that we really looked at carefully, and we wanted to find a level that was achievable, and rightfully so. These uses, particularly grow facilities, can have a pretty high energy demand, although they are improving with more LED lighting systems and the like. Nonetheless, we tried to find a balance that would recognize that they can be pretty high energy users, and the available quote unquote real estate for solar panels may be difficult to achieve higher percentages of that energy load on site. So that's the starting point of the regulation. I guess I would have to defer to the petitioners in their particular circumstance if they thought it was feasible to achieve a higher percentage.
So yeah, I spoke with one energy with a solar company, and it sounds like they said that the 10% was feasible. I think he said it was a $115,000 initial investment, and obviously some of that, or that a lot of that cost is recuperated through energy use. I don't own the building, so having a lease on my building, the way my lease is right now, I'm unlikely to see even a 1-to-1 return, unless I have a extended lease situation, which I don't have right now, although I hope to. So it would be somewhat cost prohibitive to me, because I'm unlikely to see the returns, even on the 10% that that we've talked about. So so although 10% seems like a small amount, it's a lot of solar panels covering the building. I don't know exactly how much it is, but it's somewhere around 40% of the building or half of the building is what 10% would look like. So that's my thoughts on it.
Commissioner Dish, you're all done? Okay, Commissioner Gibbranzel.
I'm curious about this as well, and I'm just wondering if the solar company gave you kind of an estimated return on investment in terms of like how many years it would take of your energy bills to be able to make it worth it to you. Just as we're developing all these things and coming up with these, it's really helpful for us to understand, just what it actually means for people in reality. And so, as we've said, we know the energy costs can be super high, and I hope that that you have to pay your energy bills so that at least that it's like this couldn't come back to you to a certain extent, because we saw some pretty sobering statistics about how much energy use these facilities are for growing. But I'm curious, I know when we put solar on our own house, they gave us like a number of years based on our use of how quickly we would recoup that cost. And I'm wondering if they gave you a similar prediction, because it's just helpful for us to know as a commission.
Yeah, I think you said it was somewhere around 5 or 6 years is where the break-even point is. So that's what they told me. I haven't I haven't looked too far into it, but that's what I was told.
Okay, that's helpful for us to just have a sense of kind of what that actually means for people. So thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
I hope your landlord understands what a good deal he's getting.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
For staff, I'm just curious, because I remember when we've had these things come up before, there are a certain number of permits that the city has. So does transitioning this to a micro business permit mean that it's freeing up more permits, or like another provisioning permit or grow permit for other businesses?
Yes, it would have the effect of sort of opening up one permit.
Okay. Thanks.
That was the same question that I had, Commissioner Hammerschmidt. So I'm going to ask the follow-up on that, which is, there's still a distant distance separation. Is that true? So micro businesses, there's still like the 600 feet between that and the nearest either other micro business or provisioning center / retailer. Okay, great. Any other questions? I think we're ready for a vote then.
I even turned my mic on for it. Commissioner Sauvé.
Yes.
Commissioner Abrams.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
Yes.
Commissioner Dish.
Yes.
Commissioner Lee.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Commissioner Mills.
Yes.
Commissioner Milstein.
Yes.
Commissioner Gibrandel.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good. You're all set then.
Thank you.
Subject to the conditions.
Thank you.
All right. We're on item 10, which is another opportunity for public comment. And I'm getting a restart your computer message. So let me make sure that I click the right button and don't actually restart my computer. Sorry about that. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes about any item of interest. Public comment may be made by calling 877-853-5247 and entering our meeting ID, which is 939-53-5 39 61 43. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand. You do that by pressing *9 on your phone. As always, please move to a quiet area when you hear the automated announcement that you are being allowed to speak. We'll call on you by the last 3 digits of your telephone number. Please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. For the callers that are on the line, if you would like to address the Planning Commission during this opportunity for public comment, you can press *9 to digitally raise your hand.
Caller with the phone number ending with 432. Caller with the phone number ending with 432. You can unmute your phone and address the Planning Commission. *6, perhaps, to unmute your phone.
There you go. Okay,
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can.
Oh, thank you, everyone. My name is Mohammed Saifuddin. I live at 2245 Hemlock Court, Ann Arbor. This is the Forest Hills Cooperative. I'm a resident, a member, and I'm also on the board of directors, but I'm speaking as a resident, not on behalf of the board. But I'll take this back to the board at our next meeting. And I appreciate this opportunity. Actually, this is the first time I've attended a planning commission, and actually, it's very instructive. I learned a lot from listening to all of you, and I appreciate the really thoughtful comments from residents you've taken, both for and against the project. Your concerns for the security, because that's one of my concerns. So I just actually recently learned this week that the permit was already granted. I didn't know that. I attended 2 community meetings before with some of the people that are on this. That we're on presenting tonight. So I just want to state for public record, I'm in opposition to this, and the reason being, one is security, but I'm a registered nurse. I'm a public health nurse. I'm a nurse case manager with Children's Special Health Care Services in the Washington County Health Department. I worked 14 years as a nursing director in a substance abuse facility overseas and a mental health facility. So it was an inpatient facility. So I've seen, and I've been an MP in emergency rooms. I'm from New York. So I've seen what mood and mind altering substances do, including alcohol. So something legislated doesn't mean it's good. And we just saw 4 years of that. So, but I understand if something is voted on, it's permitted, it can go forward. And this project going forward. But I just wanted to state my personal opposition, actually my professional opposition, because there's plenty of material, evidence-based material, peer-reviewed journals. You don't have to go to YouTube. In fact, U of M has an excellent 80-plus page report. It was put out last year on marijuana, its impact, and I'm not going to go through all of that. Everyone can read that. This is moving forward, but this is really my concern. And so what we have at hand, what I have in my hand, what I can do, is just observe this property. I mean, I do a lot of walking past there. That's why security is my concern, because I looked last week and I went through the other 28 sites on Google Maps. I was going to drive it, and so that's going to take too long. And this really is a unique location. And because of that, this large community behind it, and that is concern for many of our members. And I understand some people support that, and I get that. But I will personally be observing as a board if a problem comes to us. Of course, we discuss that. So what we have in our hand to do is make complaints to the state if they're reportable, if we feel
30 more seconds, sir.
Level. And we will do that because that could impact future licenses for this property. So they should understand that this is what we will do, they will do what we'll do, and we'll do what we're able to do. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. I don't see any other callers on the line that have called in. So we'll close this opportunity for public comment and move on to item number 11, which is commission proposed business. Is there any? I want to note something that came up to put in the notes for the future, which is we have talked because we've sent at council's request, they asked what opportunities there might be to take some of the site plans that they see for small impact projects off their plates and kind of move them down the food chain. If you recall, we sent back a memo highlighting what opportunities there might be for either projects to, have us as the last line of defense, or, just better scale those projects. Tonight's discussion about the EV charging infrastructure made me recognize that there might then be a gap. And maybe that's okay, because taking that away means that, it's one less thing. At the same time, if we're easing some of the process, I would just highlight that that's a bit concerning to me, that I think we need to have a discussion at least about whether that's the right threshold actually for the EV ordinance to kick in. If this is, again, the idea is future-proofing our infrastructure at all scales. So looks like I'm not the only person that had that idea. Commissioner Dish.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because when council voted on the EV ordinance, I did pose a question to staff. Could this little sentence, which I then forgot about because I had the same reaction everybody else did tonight to it's not required, but still, I did pose a question to staff. Can we modify that if it should happen that we would no longer bring by right site plans to council, because that would actually exclude an enormous number of proposals of new proposals. It's like 2/3, I think, are by right never mind, I won't say that because I don't know exactly how many, but still it would be a lot. And I think that I don't think that that's not the right threshold anymore if we make planning the last stop for a substantial chunk of the new developments that we currently see. Yeah.
So I guess the commission proposed business is that I know this is now on our work plan, working through actually executing on the memo that we sent to council and reducing the thresholds. And I don't think it begins at the beginning of that process, but at the end of that process, I think I would really like us to come back and say, okay, this is now the only things that we're recommending moving down. It's just a recommendation, right? Just so that everybody's clear here, that it would be our recommendation to not require going on to city council for final site plan approval. And then running that through the lens of which of those projects, if any, do we think ought to comply with this part of the ordinance? So that's my commission proposed business. Any others? Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
I have a request that Mr. Leonard, you guys may have done already, but there were a lot of comments from the public, whatever we're calling the working session that we had. And I know we have the packets of the written in communication, but has staff compiled any of those comments, and would it be possible for us to get those as well at some point before ORC?
Yeah, the transcript of the webinar.
Yes.
The questions and comments that came in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no problem.
Awesome, thank you.
Anything else? All right. Item 12 is adjournment. Would a commissioner like to move to adjourn? Moved by Commissioner Milstein, seconded by Commissioner Dish. All in favor can raise their hand or say yes. Or wave goodbye, because that's everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you all.